Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Movies in a Podshell podcast. The podcast where we take a theme and we pick two films to fit that theme. I can never do it, man. This week's theme is 70s horror. As always, I'm joined by a guy who doesn't always wear leather on his face, more partial to PVC, or so I've been told. You can call him John.
This week, Jamie, absolutely. I kind of thought I wouldn't like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And
Did you notice he didn't deny the PVC though, which is excellent.
Do you know what? So many things thrown at me. I wasn't sure what to go at first. Yeah, this week, Jamie actually messaged me and said, I think it might be your pick next episode because I feel like I might have bullied you a bit this week.
Bullied? Do you know what? I don't like...
Phrase, but it was something like that. And
I don't like to think that you've not had a good time. And
I had a good time with the latter. But
yeah, don't look now. Yeah.
Anyway. Have you been?
Well,
we've not actually done a pod or spoken probably for ages because Joey went away on holiday. And we revealed on the last episode that we did two back-to-back, 2 nights in a row, didn't we? So it's been.
We did, yeah. We were on double time, double duty. Yeah, it was we were double dipping on the pod, and since then I've had 2 weeks away in Menorca, which is distant memory now. I've been to a festival.
And yet Jamie will still have watched more than I've watched.
I definitely have, yeah.
Like, absolute fact.
Yeah, there's been a presidential attempt at an assassination. Crazy.
Yeah, wild. England lost the Euros final.
England lost the Euros final.
I've come to terms with the fact that I might live through another 50 years of hurt now. I was very, very happy when the Lionesses won. I was there, loved it. But I feel for the men's team, I could literally go another 50 years, or I might die before they even start to win. But hey.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, isn't it? It is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you know what? You can go on MoviesinaPODshell.sumupstore.com and you can go and buy yourself a little t-shirt for £18. It's not this t-shirt here. It's another t-shirt that's even nicer, with this pre-shrunk cotton, and it's got our logo on it. It's pretty cool. I like it. We're still selling them, and we've still got some left, and we're gonna drop you a new t-shirt for Halloween. It's a physical media inspired t-shirt. I'm buzzing about this one. This is cool. John's seen it. He likes it. Yeah. Well, T-shirt gate's now gone because we've gone and got a new design. So there's no infringements there, is there, John? No infringements.
Not that I know of.
Well, I'm sure you'll find something, won't you? I'm sure you'll find something. You can always find us on YouTube as well, because we're a video podcast now. You can go and find us. Just type in Movies in a Podshell, all one word, Tony. You can find us on Spotify, but we found out about bit rates on Spotify today. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Music. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. It's absolutely free, and you'll know that if you're listening to this. John, we were speaking about bit rates today, and do you know what? You have screwed me over a bit. I'm going to be honest.
Kind of worms for Jamie today. So
I went and bought a new pair of headphones.
That wasn't my fault, but so basically, I'm a bit of a sucker for I love physical media, but I don't have every film soundtrack I like to listen to. So when I edit, when I color grade, I love to listen to film scores. But previously, I used to have Spotify, which has quite low quality streams.
328 kilobytes per second.
And to be fair, if you notice it more so if you put it through a sound system, so what we watch our films through. And then a few years ago, Apple updated their libraries to this HD stream, which was really good. But then the Amazon one is even better. So I stupidly told Jamie about it, and as someone who's obsessed with bit rates of Blu-rays and 4Ks, it was quite clear he might take a turn. I basically got 6 months or 5 or 6 months free. This isn't
5 months.
Paid
5 months. I know. Yeah, we're not shilling for Bezos. No.
5 months of Amazon's music, and they have their thing called Ultra HD, where it's literally just the highest quality you can stream. It's better than a CD, which is wild.
So do you know what I found out today? People might find this actually quite interesting. So
I'll agree, and it's fine either way. So.
This is a media podcast, a movie podcast, but you're gonna love this anyway. So the strange thing about this is obviously Spotify is at the bottom of the table in terms of the quality. However, I love the interface. All my friends have Spotify. All my playlists are there. I found out today I could migrate my playlist over to Amazon Music. So I'm going to keep both of them at the moment because one of them's free for 5 months. But then I found out as well. I was like, well, if it doesn't work out of Amazon Music, I could also go to Apple. Get this right. So if you have an Android phone and you have Apple Music, you're not listening to lossless audio because it basically
Basically says you have to buy an Apple product to be able to listen to
how
lossless audio.
mental is that? It
Do you know what
resamples it down. So it resamples it down and
Yeah.
then samples it back into your ears. So you're basically back to square one. So
It
the
doesn't
only
surprise me because, like, literally when we were talking about screens and stuff, you remember when I bought I bought
the Apple
Apple
screen,
to make it work,
you
and
didn't
then it
go
was
for Apple in
like,
the end.
hey, if you want this to work correctly, you need this resolution. But by the way, there's only 3 monitors which sell it.
They're
Nice.
wild, man. Like,
You know,
I mean, I sit here on my
one of
Mac
them's
with
Yeah.
with my iPad next to it, so it's pathetic,
Anyway,
really. But do you know what's good? Let me tell you this. So for those out there that do love music and clarity, the best thing you can do, and what I did today on Prime Day. God, we love Amazon, don't we? Yes, Bezos. What you can do is you can. Well, I went and bought myself the Sony XM5. Well, I didn't go for the XM4. I went for the XM5 because
You kept calling them X5 earlier.
I did. Yeah, I'm a twat basically. So with that, right, it has the codec in there called LDAC, and that codec is the highest Bluetooth. So it basically can go up to, I think, 1,000 kilobytes per second on Bluetooth, which is still not there, but it's almost CD quality. It's basically CD quality through Bluetooth. So there you go. If you've got an
audio
Android
files out there, I know because so many people who listen.
What did you call them? What files?
Audio files.
Okay, cool.
Do you know what though? Actually, I suppose if you collect physical media, which majority of people who listen to this pod actually do, it's fine.
Have you seen? Look at this, by the way.
Nerdy.
Look at this.
Ooh,
What is this kind of old woman's mug? Hey,
it's fine.
I'm drinking my biscuit tea. I have just no drinks, no alcoholic beverages for me tonight because I'm up very early in the morning.
Same, yeah.
So I don't want to be groggy. What are you doing tomorrow, John? Where are you going?
I am shooting somewhere. Filming.
Whoa. After what we spoke about earlier.
I am filming somewhere.
Thank you.
Can't reveal who or what, but
You can't.
Yeah.
Are you joking? You can't reveal who or what? Is it private?
Tell you about it another time. It's fine.
Is it a celebrity?
Nah.
Oh, okay. I don't care
It's a
then.
surprise.
No.
Fine.
Oh, it's a surprise.
For them. So it's fun.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. Hopefully, it's not me. You turn it with the camera tomorrow. John,
Hello.
should I even bother asking what you've been watching?
I have been on an absolute binge of TNG.
Can you English, please, for people that don't know what TNG is?
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Actually, do you know what? We'll skip what I've been watching because I don't need to talk about that because no one cares. But what I can...
I think no.
Oh, go on.
People. No, I think they do. People love Star Trek. There's a few people on this that listen to this pod that really enjoy Star Trek, so they enjoy
Amy put me on a red letter media binge because what was it we were watching a review for? Was it The Acolyte?
We were watching the
I'm
review
not
for The
gonna watch The
Acolyte,
Acolyte.
which is
Which
is fantastic, by the way. Did you watch the review for The Acolyte on Red Letter Media?
Yeah. And then I basically went down the rabbit hole of like Mike and Rich, who were the presenters on there, love TNG, and then they did an episode, Star Trek: Next Generation, and they did an episode about their favorite episode. So I did the classic, I'll just watch one, and then suddenly I'm back on like season 4, and because like it gets good at 3, so I kind of binge through the ones I couldn't remember from 3 because I've seen it back in there a while. But anyway, yeah, it's amazing. I also, and this is again nerdy restoration chat. It's happening a lot today, and it's going to be happening for our 2 films as well.
You're gonna get some more.
Yeah, the restoration of Next Generation is incredible because it was shot on film, but it used to be edited on VHS. It was put onto videotape to then be like edited. So
how does that work? Does that reduce the quality of it?
Yes. So for the special effects and that, it had to be done via like this VHS thing. So when they wanted to go back and they used the VHS, to like add all the layers. So if you've got a spaceship and you've got a sky and the sun and you all passages, you add it separately. They did that via tape. But when they then went to restore it, it meant that everything was in standard definition. So they had to go back, get all the film reels, essentially recut the episodes to match the right reels.
Oh, go on,
then you
I love it.
Go and get like every ship part, like if there's 5 passes, get the 5 passes, scan those elements, put them in, and imagine there's like 23 episodes a season, and you've got to go and do it for like 7 seasons worth.
I was going to ask if it was a 23 episode a season job.
It is, and like
a lot of filler, is there?
It's not really that kind of thing though, because it wasn't really long season arcs. Like that didn't really happen until later series, so it's more so kind of like there's a lot of episode of the week, but that's kind of the point. But then there are in the later seasons things carry over, if you know what I mean. But anyway, so that's that.
Where are you watching that? What streaming service?
Netflix.
Right. Okay.
Speaking of bit rates, not bad. It's all right.
Good.
And And then I was going to say I watched an amazing documentary. This is the last thing about Star Trek that I'll stop. About how they did the exact same thing for the motion picture. So Star Trek the motion picture was shot in 70, released in 79, and basically when they restored it, it was a really rushed production in terms of it had a release date beforehand. So Robert Wise never got to. He literally, the version of the film that everyone saw in the theatrical cut, he hadn't previewed it before. It literally went out because it had a release date. They hadn't finished the sound mix. They hadn't like cut down the special effects. There's actually mistakes in the film when it was released. And then he went back to it in 2001 and did like a director's version. But when they remastered it, they only did it in standard def.
Right.
So there was some CG added, but the CG that was added was only to be in keeping with what was in the original storyboard. So it's nothing gratuitous. And then they re-released the film after COVID in 2022. But it showed in this documentary how they had to rescan all the elements again. And I've got a thing for 4K restorations. I heard Simon Cardy on the IGN podcast the other day. He thinks 4K restorations might be one of the greatest achievements of the human race. And I know what he means, because like sometimes you look at like the state the films were in, or how bad it is. So, for example, in like this next gen, in the in the motion picture, sometimes the opticals were blurred because when they didn't have chance to go back and do them again.
Yeah.
But then when they scanned them in for this 4K restoration individually, like, so let's say one's the ship, one's the stars, one's the other ship, they were like, oh, it was never out of focus. It's just when they aligned it in the optical printer, like however many years ago.
Yeah.
It just kind of went wrong in the process and they never had time to redo it. So I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, no, it is.
Is it a cheat? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what?
How curious do you want to be on it? I don't know.
When we talk about both of these 4K restorations in a minute,
sorry,
honestly,
this is such a nerdy chat. We've 11 minutes. I think we've talked about bit rates and
people are going to love it, mate. Do you know what? The audience loves it. The audience loves it.
The final thing for me, which has nothing to do with bit rates, but saying that this streaming platform has a decent bit rate and pretty good audio and the best TV shows available, which is Now TV, which has HBO shows. I'm delighted to announce that the production of Euphoria season 3 has begun. I'm so excited.
Oh man,
I literally berated Jamie and I messaged Joe. I was like, I will not shut up about this. So as you know, before it looked like it was all done and dusted. They had everyone lined up for like a summer shoot and it never happened. So they didn't have enough scripts. I kind of thought
everyone's too famous now.
Zendaya is so big now. Jacob Elord is so big now. Sydney Sweeney's so big now. I thought there is not a chance in hell they'll be able to get everyone back. But look, Zendaya is actually one of the producers on the show, isn't she? And always has been. So I think her pull and sway has led to it being able to have its conclusion. I cannot wait. I love Euphoria. I'm an apologist for season 2 as well now on rewatch, and I just want to see it conclude. They're talking about a time jump, which I think is necessary now because it's been so long and then really not teenagers anymore.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see where they go with it. And to be honest, I am just a sucker for Zendaya's acting. All she needs is a few episodes where she cries a bit and I'll be all over it like a rash. Yeah, she's incredible.
Is the cinematographer coming back?
I hope so. Marcel Rev, please come back for it. Please. Please.
I'm sure he's listening.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then the final thing I will say is in the UK, I mean everywhere, but like Wimbledon's just finished and there was a great thing. Did I send it to you the other day? Which was they did a montage in one of the games to make it look and sound like Challengers. So they had the Challengers music on and they found someone with a lady with sunglasses on who was doing like the Zendaya stare, like down.
Oh, and they reflect
left and right, and they showed all the shots of slow motion and all the sweat. I was like, I love that the coverage on BBC did that for Wimbledon. That's really cool. That's when you know something's like done really well. The fact that it was big enough to do that in a tennis tournament, and people know. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's something you can.
Djokovic got smashed, didn't he?
He did get smashed, but I was pretty chuffed about it because he's not my favorite person in the world. Anyway,
John's been wronged by Djokovic somewhere. Like, well, I wonder what happened.
I don't think how. I just remember he beat.
Did he push past you on roller coaster at Alton Towers or something?
He beat too many people I liked over the years. I think that's just the bitter truth of it. And to be fair, he is class. But just like I was a sucker for like Federer. I think he's like a gent of the game. Just loved the way he played. It was just so suave and smooth. He's like the James Bond of tennis. Do you know what I mean?
No. Anyway,
what have you been watching, mate?
Loads. So you were talking about TV. So I just want to start by saying I might have a new favorite TV show of all time, probably.
Oh, I think I might know what this might be.
Honestly, The White Lotus.
So good.
I've got one episode left, and I'm going to watch it after this pod.
One episode left.
Yeah, because I don't. Yeah, of season 2. I don't want to finish it really because I'm going to be so sad. Let me just tell you,
It's brilliant.
I was told that season 2 was different from season 1, and it is. The
It's less
writing in the
comedy.
show is just unbelievable. It fits me to a T. The dark humor, the unlikable characters. It's got Chrissy from Sopranos in there in season 2.
Right.
You know, the one that's he's a bit of a sex addict.
The dad. Yeah.
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 And just like it's just so funny. Like I just find myself like cracking up all the time. Even the dad's like the older
Right.
the granddad. Some of
Yeah.
the stuff he comes out with is just like absolutely hilarious. And I love it. I love it so much. And I was like,
as well, isn't it? Like it's a really good looking show, and
it's a
like
beautiful show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm so sorry, but it's now TV, isn't it? Like
HBO Premium.
it's unreal. Like the
Come on,
thing I
HBO,
need.
throw us a bone here. Amazon or HBO, throw something our way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely, yeah. What I
Never.
do need from Now TV though is for them to give me a 4K stream of something because
Yeah.
I'm starting to get a little bit cheesed off, and I also have to pay for the boost package to give me 1080p, and it's 2024.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, but if they just said the boost is now a 4K, I'd go for that. But
100%, of course. Yeah.
Anyway,
but they won't.
let's
Anyway,
talk about bit rates. We're going to talk about it later.
the White
so-
Lotus, just if anyone hasn't seen it, it's like basically it's about a hotel. A murder happens.
Who done it?
Yeah, so it's a whodunit, but it's not really because it's like none of the episodes are about the murder until the last one. But the show begins with there's a murder at this hotel, and
You kind of
it
flash
doesn't
back a
really.
week.
You're not really trying to figure out who's done it because you're just too busy invested in these characters, and there's like cheating going on. There's people being shady all the time, but the general conversation is just very, very funny and gripping. And
I'd love to do some spoilers with you, but I won't because there'll be so many people who haven't seen season 2.
Yeah,
but
there won't be people that haven't seen it yet.
When you finished it, I'd be keen to ask you some questions on what you think happened with certain things because there's so much they leave kind of open-ended for interpretation. I remember Harry and I debating it loads, but White Lotus was literally the last thing we watched before our daughter arrived. So like I remember literally watching that right up until that was the last thing we watched, and we watched Severance around that time as well, which is also very good.
It's wonderful. Honestly, I'm obsessed with it. So
Cool.
that's the kind of thing that I'm probably going to do a rewatch of. But anyway,
Mhm.
let me talk about what I've been watching. So on
Go.
the plane home from Menorca, I was like, right, what is acceptable to watch on my iPad? The answer was Rise of the Foot Soldier: Vengeance from 2023. Now I love these films so much. You've got Pat Tate, who's basically he's played by Craig Fairbrass, and he is the main protagonist in these films now. That the films are ridiculous. Like it started off as like football hooligans, and now it's just like drugs and that kind of thing. And basically Pat Tate, his name's Pat, which it's not a very hard name, is it?
I think it is. Pat Butcher.
That's well funny.
Too hard.
Anyway, so that's another EastEnders reference for the second pod in the row. If anyone knows what EastEnders is, it's just a revenge. His friend gets killed. He's on a rampage to get revenge, and it's trash, but it's great trash. It's legitimately the best one in terms of like the production value and the way it's shot and stuff. But they're just fun. It's very like Cockney. So you've got this guy like Craig Fairbrass is basically like, see you next Tuesday this, see you next Tuesday that.
Yeah.
And he's like, he basically walks up to this is my favorite scene in the film. It's not a spoiler, but it's hilarious. Walks up to these like bouncers at a club, and the head bouncer's like, you can't come in here. So he just like whacks him, and then one of the bouncers is like, oi, you can't do that. That's our head bouncer. And he's like, yeah. And when he wakes up, tell him he's a mug. Like it's just so funny,
That's
man.
like levels of Green Street.
It's like literally that. And I wish I could give you more quotes from it, but it's just everyone's a see you next Tuesday, or they're a soppy whatever. Anyway, I then watched a 2024 film that I was really, really excited to see because I'm actually keeping up to date with the 2024 films. It's a film Is it from A23? I don't know. It's called In a Violent Nature anyway. And for those of you who like it's A24, yes, I've been doing this for months now. It's what Ridley Scott said, and it's funny, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Did he say it on purpose though, or did he wind them up?
I think he's there for the wind up because he is just that bitch. Like so.
However, they did also produce part of Euphoria, which I didn't realise till fairly recently. So,
well, that's a second Euphoria drop in 10 minutes, 5 minutes probably. In a Violent Nature, so this has been a very love or hate film for a lot of people. Not for John at all. It's basically about this monster who rises from the grave and just walks around for 90 minutes. And it's basically like, chum, 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 walking through a forest, disgustingly gory kill, chum, 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 walk through a forest, disgustingly gory kill. One of the kills on there is probably one of the most inventive things I've seen, which is brilliant. So I'm not going to spoil that for anyone. It's just really boring, man. Like it's so, I was exhausted by that. I was like, and so my review was, A23 fans will call this a deconstructed slasher. Others will say it's boring, and The Burning did it way better. So there's a film called The Burning, which is basically, and by the way, deconstructed slasher, I will just throw out there, it wasn't me that coined that phrase. It was a friend of the show, Patch. Okay. And so credit to him. Anyway, In a Violent Place, I give it 2.5 stars. It takes a lot for me to give, like, yeah, it's just, I found it really rubbish. Anyway, I then had to cheer myself up. So I watched a film called Say Anything, which has been on my list, right, for absolutely years. It's not available to stream. It's got no DVD or physical release. It's directed by Cameron Crowe, who, I love Cameron Crowe stuff. If you don't know, he did Jerry Maguire. He did Almost Famous. Brilliant. And he's also like written some like Fast Times at Ridgemont High by Amy Heckerling. Like, so some of my favorite writing from him. He continues here. It's 1989. It's basically just about a guy called Lloyd Dobler, who's played by John Cusack. Very weird, irreverent performance, but I love it. And he's basically trying to date this girl who's probably too good for him, or he thinks she is. He's played by, I want to say her name. So her name is Diane Court. Sorry, by Ione Skye. You might know her from somewhere. That's not very helpful. Anyway, you might know her from somewhere. But anyway, yeah, so he starts dating this girl, and she's got quite an overprotective father. And what happens is, great writing all throughout. So you can just, it's basically a kind of a coming of age teen drama, like really just sweet and heartwarming. Her dad is quite overprotective, so he's not happy that she's dating this guy, because she's not really ever dated anyone, because she always like, no one's ever good enough for her, that kind of thing. He starts getting investigated for like embezzling money from a care home, and it's kind of just a story about that, really. Like, but it's a story about their relationship, and it's just really sweet. And yeah, I'll be revisiting that over and over and over again. I then watched, so Jane on the last episode said her number one film of 2024 was The Bike Riders. Now I watched The Bike Riders. I went to the cinema to see it because I was very excited about it. We know what it's about. It's basically Goodfellas on motorbikes. Basically, it's not obviously not as good as Goodfellas, but it's very good, like solid 8 out of 10 for me. The casting director deserves a pat on the back because it's just perfect. Jodie Comer's accents, as Jane mentioned, are just ridiculous. It's like proper Chicago accent, which you just wouldn't believe. To be honest, I think the star of the show here, though, everyone's talking about Austin Butler, great. Jodie Comer, great. Tom Hardy, for me, this is his best performance that I've seen. He's
Bronson. That's the one.
Yeah, honestly, you need to see it. He's just got this like quite strange performance that you can't really put your finger on. It's a pure character like performance. He is, you would think that it was method, but he's recently cleared up in an interview that he doesn't do method. But it's so good and so subtle. The nuances in the way he reacts to things, but then also the violence as well. It's fantastic, and I'd highly recommend. It's got bikes, it's got fighting, it's got drinking. It's just really fun. Like, so, I'd recommend. You know me. I love bikes, fighting, and drinking. And then went to the Mockingbird, and John's like so bored now. He's like, why?
I know he's
what-
going to talk about another film I will hate.
Well, I will. Went to the Mockingbird and went to they do secret screening on a Friday night. It's free, right? All you do is pay booking fee. How cool's that, right? So we did that. This is just a revenge film called Blue Ruin. I wasn't expecting it, so I was like, what could it be? And then it comes up with Blue Ruin. I've seen it before, but I was buzzing to see it again. It's quite a slow burn, but it is just basically just this guy who's a beach bum. He gets some really bad news, and he finds out someone's been released from prison, so he goes home to get vengeance. So that's a really good film. I just love it. Yeah, it's great. It goes from like 0 to 1,000 in about 5 minutes. It's a 2024 film that's been getting really good reviews. I hated it. Actually hated it. It's called I Saw the TV Glow. It's from Jane Schoenbrunn, who actually did another film that I actually really hate. So sorry, Jane, but I'm out now. It's just your particular style doesn't work for me. We're all going to the World's Fair. Hated it, but a lot of people like it, so it's a me problem, okay? It's basically like a Stranger Things weird kind of film about a TV show, and these two people like connect, and it's like really kind of like quite spacey. I'm done. I ain't gonna speak about it. I hate it. Did I say I hate it? Don't like it. Anyway,
He said he hated it.
I rewatched RoboCop 2, which was, so I love RoboCop 1. It's like one of my favorite films of all time. RoboCop 2, I used to always go on about, but RoboCop 2, the sequel's brilliant. Like, that's one of the like the few.
End of that one, or was that 3?
No, that's number 3, and you can see the strings on his wings. Horrendous.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, RoboCop 2, I'm not going to bother giving you a synopsis about RoboCop. It's crap, basically. It's really, really, it's way worse than I remember. The story's all over the place. They could have done loads more with him and his struggle, like remembering who he is. But they didn't. It's crap. Like it was a 2-star for me. I had a really bad day of films this day. I watched 3 films. I also then watched VHS 2 because VHS 1 is one of my favorites. As we know, this is an anthology. Generally, someone goes into a house, finds a TV with the VHS tapes, and they start watching the VHS tapes. Then we're transported into like that VHS tape. Boring as hell, like dreadful. Not one compelling story out of the 5 or 6 that I've seen. Bored out my nut for 96 minutes. Some completely preposterous ideas. Just really bad. John, let's speak about Furiosa and Mad Max Saga.
Yeah, so I've not seen it, but I've heard mixed things because people just said it kind of looks worse than Mad Max Fury Road. But then I think there's a good logic behind that, which was I think the studio left them to it for that film, so they had time. And I think the behind the scenes was a bit of a nightmare. And I think for this one, they said if you do another one, you need to do more in studio. So they still have like practical stunts.
It's like 9 years removed from the first one.
Yeah, I think there was it's been rumored, let's say, allegedly, classic, that there was more of a studio mandate for how it had to be produced in terms of how to achieve certain things for safety of actors as well. Let's be clear, and also like those shoots always sound rubbish. Like Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy really fell out, didn't they, back in the day?
I don't know actually, but this is obviously a prequel, and there's a really funny review on Letterboxd. And the review is, it's Furiosa, not Furiosa, which is brilliant Harry Potter reference. It's a prequel of how Furiosa becomes to be Furiosa, basically. And it's 2.5 hours long. My review was, didn't see that coming. And by that, I mean an overly long slog with weirdly off-putting low-budget CGI mixed with some pretty good-looking vehicles. Chris Hemsworth was surprisingly good. So this has had £18 million or dollars more budget than Fury Road, and a whole extra half an hour than Fury Road, and it's looking like it's been stretched very, very thin 10 years later. It's not a good looking film. It's pure. It looks. In fact, you know what? It looks like an MCU film. Like
we went there.
Not quite as bad as an MCU film, but close. It's the CGI is really poor. Like it looks like a constant green screen. And whereas so is as we spoke about, because we reviewed Fury Road, that's got a lot of hidden CGI, but it's hidden. Like this just looks lower budget.
May have been production time.
Might have been. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's. I will not go back and watch it again. I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. In fact, the one thing I would say that Anya Taylor-Joy is great, and Chris Hemsworth is the highlight of it. The character he plays is really quite very fun. Like he's having a real good time, like chewing the scenery. But the story and the CGI, it's an ugly. It's one of the ugliest films I've seen in a very long time, which I was really surprised at, because George Miller's known for these like breathtaking action sequences, and we know he can do it. So I would like to know a little bit more about the story behind it. I'd love to see what happened. Why was it 10 years?
He had to sue the studio in between, didn't he? To get the
there you go then.
So I think there was something like he didn't get the royalties he was due on.
That's hilarious.
Allegedly.
Right.
So I can't remember.
Allegedly.
But no, I think there was a court case essentially. Then they settled it, and then he was able to make the sequel. Yeah. But obviously, by then, Charlize Theron. Initially, I think he wanted to film them back to back, get Charlize Theron to do it, and then obviously time passed, and
that would have been that would have been more appropriate. I would like to quickly mention a film. I'm nearly done, John. I promise. You're like, can we talk about my favorite film? I watched a film called A Time for Dying, which is a Blu-ray from Indicator. It's a Bud Becker Western. So anyone who knows about Westerns, Bud Becker did like a series of Westerns with Randolph Scott. So my personal favorite would be The Tall T. Decision at Sundown's great as well. But he then did one, I believe it was his last film, and it was called A Time for Dying. It's got Anne Randall in it, by the way, who it was one of those moments where like it sounds a bit pervy, but I was like, I need to Google this woman, because what else has she been in? Because she's one of the prettiest women I've ever seen in my life. And she was in a film called Model Shop, which I'd seen. So I knew, and Westworld as well. But Anne Randall in A Time for Dying would recommend that. But it's got Richard Lapp in it as well. John's like smirking. He's like, you shouldn't be speaking like this. I'm like, it's fine. Like, let's listen to everyone speak about Chris Hemsworth while I write it. It's only 73 minutes long, 1969. It's basically about a farm boy who he wants to be a bounty hunter, and he rescues a young woman, Anne Randall, and she's been tricked into working in its brothel, in this town's brothel, and he rescues her from there. And it's kind of just about their little journey. It's got really good. The end of it's brilliant. So I'd highly recommend that. 73 minutes. What else would you be doing?
Watching
a couple more left.
Massacre.
Couple more left. Brian and Charles. So I watched Brian and Charles, which is right. So I needed cheered up, because I made a massive boo boo. So I went to see Longlegs last night, but I also booked tickets to see Longlegs on Saturday. So I booked 2 tickets to see Longlegs, cost me 22 quid, and I didn't attend because I was like really kind of just far too optimistic about the time it would take me to go get a pizza, go have some pizza, and then make my way down to the cinema. So sitting in the pizza place, and the guy did say to me on the way in, he's like, it's about an hour away. I was like, yeah, okay. I've been there like hundreds of times, and it's never been anywhere near the time they say. So I was like, it'll be like 20 minutes. Went in, got a drink, and then just time ticked on. I was about to finish my beer, and I was like, right, let's go now. If we need to go now. Then the man came over. Worst possible timing, because I was about to go, would have seen the film, had no pizza, would have grabbed a burger. So he comes over, he's like, we've got a table. I was like, yeah, okay. So I looked at my watch, I was like, yeah, fine. Okay. Went over, pizza took ages. I watched them package up about 25 deliveries, and I was sitting like, it's not their fault either, by the way. The pizza arrived in a really fast, acceptable time. And then, so I said to my other half, we've got 2 choices here. We either ruin this pizza and like just like wolf it down. We're not going to enjoy it. It's our favorite pizza place. Shout out to Rudy's. Not their fault at all, by the way, or mine. Or we enjoy the pizza. We're still going to be late for the cinema anyway, because it's like 20-minute walk. Or we're going to have to just suck up the cinema, sack it off, and enjoy the pizza and take our time in here, and then we'll just rebook. So that's what we did. And it took me a good 20 minutes to talk me out of being really upset about it, because I was like this, because I was really looking forward to seeing Longlegs. I have since seen it, and I'll talk about it in a minute. Right. So Brian and Charles. It's basically about this well, no, it's not young guys. It's about a guy who lives on his own. Quite strange. Everyone's really strange in the films I've been watching at the moment. He is an inventor, and he's been inventing all this crap. Like, it's very funny, and he invents a robot called Charles. And it's just about the relationship with him and the robot. And there's a bit of like tension there towards the end, not with him and the robot, but with like other people. It's just brilliant, like really funny, heartwarming film. I think I watched it on Now TV, so I'd just highly recommend that. Yeah, it's exactly what I needed when I felt so sad about the whole situation. So that's what I did. I watched Brian and Charles. Right. So lastly, John, I'm going to skip a film because I've been going on for ages, haven't I? I'm going to talk about Longlegs. So as we know, Longlegs has been marketed as the scariest film ever made. All this stuff about it, and it's it's not. The film is starring Micah Monroe, who is a proper genre actress at this point. People might know her from The Guest. She's been in a film called Watcher, which is brilliant. So I'd highly recommend The Watcher. And she's been in It Follows, which we covered a few months ago. Now she is playing an FBI agent, and they're on the case of a killer called Longlegs, who has been cropping up every few years and he basically kills a whole family on a specific date of a daughter's birthday. And it's basically about her and Blair Underwood, who's playing Agent Carter, and they're working together to uncover this case. Now, this is directed by Osgood Perkins. I've not seen any of his other films, actually, but they're on my list now because they're supposed to be good. And this was really good. I did really enjoy it. I wouldn't say it was any more scary than the other things that I've seen, other films that are scary. It's more of a police procedural.
Police procedural.
Yeah. And I've seen lots of like 5-star reviews. The marketing campaign for it was fantastic. I would probably say that if I was so I give it 4 stars. I give it an 8 out of 10. If I was going to give it any more than that, what I'm saying then is that it's as good as Silence of the Lambs, and it's not. It's just like, because Silence of the Lambs is a genre defining film, you know, like it's considered up there with the greatest thrillers ever made. This is very much like Silence of the Lambs. I would say it's a cross between Silence of the Lambs, Seven, that kind of thing, but then it has got horror elements and it is scary and it is jumpy, but I've been scared by loads more in the cinema. So if we're gonna give it 4.5 stars or 5 stars, we are admitting that it's as good as Silence of the Lambs, and in my opinion it's just not. Micah Monroe's performance is her career best performance in my opinion. Like, she's brilliant. It stars Nicolas Cage as well, and his performance is like completely wild, unhinged, as you've seen, as you know what he's like. And her performance is very much reserved, again playing another quite strange character. That, like, she's playing it straight and he's playing it wild, but it works really well. It's great. It's really good, and I would highly recommend. I would say please go and watch it in the cinema to everyone, because the more you do go watch it in the cinema, the more we're going to stop getting another Bad Boys film as opposed to our Longlegs, you know. And I think it's gonna do quite well in the cinema as well. I do. There's a lot of people that I know have seen it. So, solid 8 out of 10. The best horror I've seen this year? I don't know. Maybe. It's good, really good.
When did we see Evil Dead Rise? Was that this year? Was that last year?
No, that was last year. Yeah,
damn.
Yeah, mate. Last year, but it was what a cracker. You enjoyed that though, didn't you? And Fade Alvarez. Oh no, he didn't direct Evil Dead Rise, but he is going to direct Alien Romulus.
Speaking of horror, I mean, we should probably talk about the first film.
Yeah, we've been running quite long, haven't we? Yeah. It's all my fault.
It's a film from 1974, and it's called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
What happened was true. The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America.
Oh yes, directed by Tobe Hooper. Now, when I was doing my research, people were saying things like, often you'll hear that Halloween is the first slasher ever made, and that's actually incorrect. Some people would say it was Psycho. Some people would say it was Peeping Tom, which I would argue that it could be either of those. However, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released on the same date as Black Christmas, which is considered the first slasher. I would kind of say Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a slasher as well. John, now, we're not in a good place now, are we? We almost had a little falling out.
No, there's no falling out. It was just, come on, what was the WhatsApp message? Should I get the WhatsApp message up?
Get the WhatsApp message up, yeah.
It.
He texted me, so we were both watching it at the same time. I think I was maybe about 10 minutes behind him.
You were. So the messages went as follows. Sorry.
He's just going to find it.
Chat today about audio.
We're talking about bit rates and streaming services.
Okay, here we go. Right, so
it
went something like this. First of all, when I searched Chainsaw Massacre, there's so many versions of it on Apple. I had to actually look at the runtime to make sure I watched the right one.
Oh,
and weirdly, it said the year 1998. I have no idea.
Because that's the remake.
Yeah, but it wasn't the remake. It was the original. Trust me, I watched the right one. But anyway, so that confused me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Jamie's first message was, "I can't believe you didn't wait until it was dark, as in to watch the film."
Yeah.
To which I replied, "I'm not started yet." He put, "Excited for you. I'm about to watch." About an hour later, bang on the dot, because there is a bit of build up in the film. I put, "Absolutely not." Jamie, what's wrong? John, no. Jamie's, ha ha ha, because like that's his response to anything. This is all part of the horror. My message said, "This is all part of the horror I hate. It's violent, it's grim as," you can guess the next word, "and cannibals." And then Jamie, "It is violent, yeah. Like all the worst, I miss Carrie." So, yeah.
Should
look, I'll be honest, like, we'll do a synopsis and then we'll get into, like, I do have positive points to talk about as well. I'm not just going to be
you better do.
But I will also talk about what I did not like. But go.
Okay. So the film, obviously,
the plot's minimal, but yeah, go.
The plot is pretty minimal. The film is written and directed by Toby Hooper. Kim Henkel does have a writing credit as well. And it is a very, very simple plot. It's about 5 teenagers who are en route to visit their grandfather's grave, which they think there's been someone basically just desecrating graves, like, or damaging graves. And it's just the kind of them just messing around, like just that kind of like the classic beginning of a horror. These teens getting to know, well, they already know each other, but they're just like shooting the shit, that kind of thing. And they're just driving around and they stop at a gas station. And they've obviously ran out of gas because classic. But I say classic, actually lots of films have copied this. Now the gas station attendant basically convinces them he says, like, maybe you should wait because I'm getting a delivery later. And they're like, no, we're going to go up. We've heard there's a farmhouse up there on the left. Is that right? He's like, well, yeah, there is. And so they decide to drive up to the farmhouse and all hell breaks loose. It's a slaughterhouse. It's not a farmhouse.
Yeah.
So,
so a few things, interesting points about this film. So, like, this film was it was an independent film, wasn't it? Very small budget. It was shot on 16mm film stock.
It was,
which means, so like 35mm was obviously the bigger format, which held better picture quality. But this was shot on 16mm. But I would argue that the gritty nature of it kind of works well with it being on that lower resolution format. And it was really interesting. I was reading someone talk about the restoration. They said they actually preferred watching on VHS because they liked the crappy quality of it and the kind of feeling it made you feel uncomfortable.
Do you know what you call people like that?
I don't know. Pretentious.
Posers.
Well,
I need a can of Coke.
Has a sip. It's the cinematography of this film is interesting because it's kind of like you're just there. It's very much like a documentary style. It's not found footage, obviously, because of when it was shot, but it does feel very natural and like. So, for example, the camera's kind of always moving and refocusing, isn't it? It's kind of it's not very static at any point. There's very few shots which seem staged. There's a few later on with like tracking shots and what have you outside, but essentially it feels documentary like. But the other element of it is it. What I appreciate about this film is it made daytime scary. It's all
Yeah,
well and good making nighttime
yeah,
scary, but when you've got a horror film which can make daytime scary, then I think it's really well done. And like there is a sense of dread from the off. It's a barren environment they're stuck in, and the house looks eerie from the off when they're checking it out. It just looks grim as buggery, but it's not relying on many jump scares, I'd say as well. Like there are some jump scares in this film, but not too many. And it's a lot of the uncomfortableness from the film comes from like that kind of Wicker vibe, or like, you know, mixing skulls together with the kind of vibe that you get in Yellow Jackets, or the kind of vibe from True Detective season 1, that kind of like, ooh, that feels uncomfortable.
yeah,
And it's not so much what you're seeing, it's kind of, it's imagery you don't normally, yeah, I suppose it is. It's imagery you don't normally see associated together, so it makes you feel uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is like this for me is a 5-star stone cold banger, perfect film in every single way. And I think there's a few reasons for that for me. Like, I think that you very rarely see cinematography like this in a horror film, and I think the cinematography in this is quite special. Like they've really gone to town. Like, although they've not had much money, I said this like loads of times across the pod, like loads of episodes. They have 140 grand they used to film this, which is a shoestring budget. The film actually made 30.9 million.
Wow.
And it was in the cinema for about 6 or 7 years after. Like every year it would be back in the cinema
Yeah.
because people would they would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for a film that you don't really see any gore, it's in a lot of the violence is implied. So it's quite like I think it's quite goreless. You don't see any of you see someone get hit with a hammer. You don't see anyone get sawn up. You don't see
someone get hooked on a meat hook.
But you see what you do see. You don't see any gore from that though. You just see it get put up. And I think the horror
like
and the terror that this film manages to give you, because Tobe Hooper was shooting this as if it was a PG, and then it got rated like an X. It was one of the British. It was banned in the UK. It was a video nasty. But the terror that it manages to evoke, without showing much of like gore or like actual stabbing or limbs being sawn off, is incredible, really. And I think it's all down to, as you said, the grainy nature of it, the way that it's shot. And I think it's really cleverly shot by the cinematographer, because he uses loads of different shots. He uses wide shots, close shots, he focus pulls. We get to see they go from dusk till dawn, which I love that so much. We see them in the day, we spend the whole night with them, and then we see the sun coming up, and they make full use of that sunrise and the sunset.
You get it's almost like Joaquin Phoenix dancing on the steps moment. I joke to you in Joker, but it's kind of the face with the chainsaw, that kind of the light bursting through as he's like in his element. But man, I hate Leatherface. But
I think that he's a very interesting villain. We obviously, so Leatherface, as I'll go a little bit more into it, like they pick up a hitchhiker along the way who he's acting very strange, and there's something not quite right. You get that like eeriness about him.
Chops his hand.
Later we find out he's part of the family of cannibals, and he cuts his hand, and apparently they couldn't. They cut his hand for real. There was a lot of injuries on this film. Like, it was apparently a horrendous filming experience for all of the actors. I'll go into a little bit why. Like, in fact, I've got so Second Sight did a Blu-ray of it, 4K remaster of this, and it's, I'll tell you what, there's more. There's 2 documentaries on here for an hour and 20 minutes each. There's a brand new one, and there's one they did a few years ago, and it just goes through all the filming, everything like that. Yeah, he cuts his own finger, and then he cuts. There's 5 of them all together, and one of them is disabled, and then he cuts a disabled guy, and then they boot him out, and it's quite a strange scene, because there's kind of the first kind of scene where you're a little bit scared of of what's going to come. And that's when they go to the gas station, and that's where they go to the house, and you feel a little bit sorry for Franklin, his name is, the guy in the wheelchair, because they're all having fun. The other two couples are having fun. They're upstairs, for example. So they're upstairs and he can't get up there. So he's like, like really like kind of mocking them. And he's a bit bitter, really. Like he's bitter, and you kind of understand why he is, like, and you feel sorry for him.
If I was Pam or Sally, I wouldn't be laughing that much in that house.
No, neither would I. And do you know what? That does brings me on to a little question.
Go for it.
So, Film Forager writes in and she says, for how much money would you spend one night in the TCM house?
It just wouldn't happen. I would never stay there. No.
What about
I've seen what happens.
What about if...
And he goes, he makes pig noises and comes in with a mask on.
What if you could guarantee that, like, so you knew you weren't going to get killed, but, like, that house, though, like, would you spend a night in that house, like, knowing that, like, it's just a film and that nothing bad's really happened there? Would you stay in it then?
I'd be creeped out, psychological.
But how much? Would you not? You don't have a price? Like $1 million? £1 million to change your family's life?
Huh? You probably do it for less, but, like...
You do it for less? Okay, good. I was going to say, like, I think your wife would be a little bit upset if you decided not to. Yeah, she'd be fuming. She'd be like, you've had a chance to change our life, and just because you're scared. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably do it for it. So if the killer was in there, obviously there's no amount of money, because I'm quite happy doing I'm not happy. Like, I'm working until I'm retired, but I obviously wouldn't go in there and chance it with Leatherface. However, if all of the bones and stuff were in there and I had to stay in there, I'd probably do it for how much? 20 grand?
I thought you'd say about 20 grand for some reason.
Everyone's got a price.
Yeah, that's well 20k.
Is that how cheap I am?
Yeah, literally
20k. How much would you do it for then? What's the price, John?
I don't know. 20k is all right, isn't it? But
20k is all right, isn't it?
You want to get enough to I don't know, buy an Aston Martin or something.
Yeah, there you go, Chandra. About 20k. If the killer was in there, I just wouldn't really fancy my chances, so I obviously wouldn't do it.
Also, he seemed pretty quick.
He's really quick, isn't he, the killer?
Yeah. He's not a slow guy. He's not like the Halloween guy, just kind of
Gunnar Hansen, rapid, and we'll speak about that in a bit, how rapid he is. Right. So yeah,
let me say what I didn't like about it.
Yeah, please, yeah.
So my issue with it is, as you probably guessed from my WhatsApps, I am more uncomfortable with horror, which I feel can be replicated, because I feel like there's enough dark stuff going on in the world without having to see it. I feel like a psychopath with a chainsaw is incredibly plausible. And what I would say is, we talked about how horror creates a visceral reaction. So therefore the film has achieved its goal by making me dislike it as much as I do and make me feel as uncomfortable as I did. But it's just not something I get a kick out of. The only thing I found funny was the sequence towards the end when they're like, Grandpa's the best killer around. Let's go. He uses a hammer in the back of the head and he drops it like 5 times. Because it's such a ridiculous situation that it becomes funny. But in terms of like the rest of it, I remember having similar feelings to Hills Have Eyes though. I didn't like Hills Have Eyes, and this is very much similar vibes to that in terms of like the location, the setting, and like the family. And it's just not for me, and that's fine. Like you're not wrong to like it. It's just something that it doesn't tick any box for me. I get no kick out of it. I just felt quite sick and uncomfortable throughout it. Like, but then, visceral reaction.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I literally think it's an absolute masterpiece. And again, like there's so many reasons why. Like when we see, I think it's Sally, played by Marilyn Burns. She's, when she's walking up to the house in her red shorts. I think it's Sally. Forgive me if I'm wrong. The camera's kind of underneath her, and it's kind of showing. Pam. I think, yeah, actually, yeah, it's Pam. It's showing the size of the house, like showing how like big the house is, and obviously, as with Don't Look Now, we're going to speak about where Venice is a character, the house is a character as well. And my favorite, I've got a few favorite scenes in the film. The one where there's a bit where she goes into the room and all the bones and feathers are on the floor. And by the way, so all of these bones were all real animal bones. The roadkill you see at the beginning of the film, the armadillo, is real. So they went driving around roads local to the set and picking up roadkill and using real roadkill. A lot of some of the blood on the characters are real. So right at the end, when she's being chased by Leatherface and she's running around in the woods, she's like basically all the blood on her legs and stuff is real because she's being cut by all these branches and stuff like that. Right. So there is quite a horrible time for them to shoot. It was like 100 degrees every day. The budget was so tight that the suit that Leatherface was wearing, he was wearing that for the same suit, and they didn't want to wash it or anything like that, but he was wearing it for 16 hours a day for the whole 31-day shoot, or however many scenes he was in. So they were all stinking by the end of it. But that scene in that room where there's bones and feathers all on the floor, the sound there, the soundtrack contains no sounds from any musical instruments, except the two songs that they had copyrighted music to. So I think one of the songs might be T-Rex. I can't remember what the other one is. But they used sounds an animal would hear inside a slaughterhouse. So when she's on the floor and she's got the industrial score is like really kind of overwhelming almost. And the sound in the film is overwhelming in general. It's panic-inducing, world closing in on her sound, and it builds and it builds, and she's crawling around the floor. She's like, what is this place? And it's got all the feathers and stuff. And she runs out that door. And when that metal door slides open and Leatherface runs out for the first time, like he's making these... That for me, honestly, like, I have goosebumps even talking about it. That for me is absolutely terrifying. And he's rapid as well. Like, he's so big and he's so fast. It's that for me, like that's one of my favorite scenes in the film when it's the first time you see him. The chainsaw is like an extension of him, you know, like he's like at one with it. I'd kill to see this in the cinema. I'd kill to see it. Like the way from that scene onwards, the light gets lower and lower as the sun goes down. And actually, yeah, you are right. No, sorry, that was Sally actually in the house.
Yeah,
actually Pam is with Franklin at this point. So Pam's with Franklin, and they're deciding they don't know whether to go. They're back at the car, and they decide to go look for Jerry and Sally because Jerry is the first victim.
You get confused. Other way around. Sally is the final girl.
You sure about that?
Yeah, Pam is the one who's.
Sorry, I've written it down wrong. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Pam is the one who is already at her house. She's the one who gets hooked on the meat hook.
Thank you very much. Kirk is the first one that gets killed. Yeah, and he's long gone by this point because he gets hammered to death. And then obviously.
The guy looks like Austin Powers.
Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah, he's looking. It's the most 70s look I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, so and then we see Franklin get chainsawed to pieces, sitting in his wheelchair, which is crazy that they would decide to do that. And then yeah, Pam's just been. Is it Pam that's been? No, Sally. Is it Pam or Sally?
Sally's the one who gets. Pam's on a meat hook. Pam has the jump scare when she's in the freezer, which I can stand.
There we go. I've written down the wrong name. Sally's being chased by the forest.
Girl, played by Marilyn Burns. She's the one who does all the running.
Thank you. She's been chased through the forest for ages. And the funny thing about this is that Gunnar Hansen was apparently much, much faster than Sally in real life. So when they're being chased, Gunnar Hansen was having to like stop and like pretend to like saw like branches and stuff to slow himself down. But yeah, there's at that point there. And so we this is what I love about it. You've had that scene, and then immediately after, you've got this scene of Sally running away, screaming, and this screaming goes on for probably 25 minutes, like because the screaming goes from there to when she goes into the gas station to when she gets dragged into the house, and she's screaming, and I just find it quite overwhelming actually, and like that for me is just without showing anyone getting chainsawed. And really it comes to this like real quite iconic, there's two really iconic scenes in this film. And it wasn't the scene I mentioned where Leatherface comes out of the room. It's the scene where we meet the whole family. And so when that gas station scene, when Sally makes her way to the gas station, you're like, oh, she's found solace. This is great. But actually, she hasn't found solace. She's found, his name is the cook. And we don't find out until Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 what his actual name is. So I'm not going to spoil it here. I'll talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 in a minute because I think that's fantastic for a different reason. Fantastic. Very good for a different reason. But the cook basically is like, oh yeah, you okay? Like leads her into a false sense of security. She's freaking out. And then all of a sudden
he's been like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's
yeah, exactly.
fine. They're gone now.
And you start realizing there's a lot of meat around. Lots of meat, strange looking meat.
And she said at the start she's a vegetarian. Like,
yes.
It's very much like set up. And you hear the crackling of like the grill.
Yeah, the fat and stuff like that. Yeah. So we then have the cook who's trying to drag her back to this house because we find out he's actually out to he's involved with this house somehow. And she tries to fight back, but no, that's not going to happen. So he hog ties her, takes her back to the house, and we find the other previous hitchhiker. And so before we know it, she's knocked out. We find ourselves in a room, and this for me, this scene is like quite uncomfortable really to watch. Like, I don't really get scared by much, but it is an uncomfortable scene. They've replicated it in Resident Evil 7, I think.
The dinner table.
But yes, so the dinner table, we kind of see it from lots of different perspectives. Like, and that's what I love about this. This is where the cinematography really shines for me. Like, it's not just about the gorgeous sunset. Although yes, it is gorgeous, but yeah, we can shoot a sunset. But what we can't do is we've then made this like kind of 10-minute scene around the dinner table really, really interesting because we've got loads of different focus pulls. We've got loads and loads of like extreme close-ups of Sally just screaming for so long, and it's like you're sitting there, you're like, oh my god, like how long is this going to go on for? We get introduced, then we find out the family are cannibals, and they get Grandpa down, and Grandpa. So another interesting little fact is that Grandpa, the actor who played the Grandpa, John Duggan, he was so annoyed at having all this makeup on. He said, I'm not doing this again.
It's not very good makeup either, is it?
It's not very good makeup, but apparently it took a long time to go on. So they had to shoot that scene over 36 hours, and because he refused to go back in the makeup, basically. And yeah, so then we kind of find out they're going to kill Sally, but they want the Grandpa to do it. And as John mentioned, yeah, it is quite a comical scene because the Grandpa's
so outrageous. Like it is funny. Like it's not funny at all, but the fact that. So like they're like, oh, Grandpa's the best killer. He said he could do 9 in a row if it wasn't for them running or something. And then like he grabs a hammer and it's like bonk.
Yeah,
and like lifts it up again, bonk into the bucket over and over.
It's crazy. We've got at this point now with all these different focus perspectives showing her eyes like bright green. You see the veins in her eyes, and then it's shot from the eyes of her, and then shot from the eyes of Grandpa. I just think that whole scene and the way it's set up and the
good use of POV.
It's really good use of POV. And back then, you wouldn't expect to see it in an independent film like this.
Or maybe you would though, because of the fact they're actually experimenting more.
Because they've got nothing
There's
else
nothing to
like,
lose,
really.
isn't there? And like, the rough and ready feel of parts of the film is kind of the charm. Like that kind of. I've said a million times.
The budget works for it. The 16mm works for it. The film
sometimes you get more creativity from a smaller budget. We've talked about this before. Like Aliens isn't a huge budget film compared to most blockbusters of that time, but like you used it creatively and well. Same for Alien, and then get away from that. Just horror in general is usually super creative, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And Patch writes in and says, why is horror so synonymous with low budgets? Blood, gore, and horror effects aren't free.
I don't think they're free, but I think they're easy to access things that can be used for them. So, for example, when they did like Alien 3, classic, they would go to the local butchers and get like offal and like loads of grim stuff and like put it in the practical suits. And so I think there's ways of doing things. I think they used they match the color of blood to real cow blood and stuff.
Yeah.
It's grim. I hate stuff like that. But anyway, like that's what they did. So I feel like there's real world tangible things you can use to replicate it. But there is a thing about, and Finch is right about this, like blood in films prior to like the 90s looks really bad and fake. Like especially in the next film,
It does.
It's like bright red, and it's like blood's like maroony red wine color rather than actual like bright red.
Yeah, I think so. Like it literally looks like red paint most of the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, I was thinking about this, I think the horror's more accessible to people as well. So you don't have to be a good writer to do a horror film. You
need a good setup or situation, or just like I've got a good baddie here. Like I've got a good thing that will scare people. Like, and even stuff like so we're talking about like creative use. I think James talked about before. Paranormal Activity was a simple idea. Here's like a baby camera in a bedroom or whatever. And like look at all the stuff that happens on it, and it's creepy as buggery, and it's hilarious. Like I've got a baby monitor which has a camera on it. And like when you check it, you do sometimes like creep out. Like you get the vibe of like, oh, because of the film that the technique of Paranormal Activity. It's like when someone has a handheld camera, your head always goes, oh, Blair Witch. Like you just do. Like it's that vibe. And actually, Blair Witch has probably quite a lot in similarity into Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's more found footage, but it is found footage. Is the idea of it. But that kind of the way it's shot to make you feel engaged with it as if you're there, I think is very much a thing. And I must say, my biggest compliment for Texas Chainsaw Massacre is how much it inspired Ridley Scott for Alien. So when he shot Alien, he said he went to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it changed the idea of like what horror was. Because I think horror to that was more like, correct me if I'm wrong, but more often than not, more like the Hammer horror films where they're kind of like adventure-y
in the 60s.
Yeah, and more like, well, not slashers basically, but not particularly realistic, more just kind of, oh, Dracula's coming down the stairs,
for sure.
And like, you know, and then this was kind of, no, like this is grim, here's a serial killer and whatever. And he loved the use of camera, and if you remember in Alien, he operated the camera himself for a large majority of it, and a lot of that film is handheld. Way more than you would think of Alien is handheld, and I love the fact that inspired him because it's part of the look of that film. And as we know, I love Alien. But yeah, and also he talked about the use of sound design, which Jamie talked about. So when they go inside, you hear the noises that you would hear in a what's the word where they kill animals? Why can I not think of that?
Slaughterhouse.
That's the word. And it reminded me of, you hear one noise when they go in the house, and it sounds like you can hear the meat hooks going like ching, 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 just slightly in the score. Alien, when I forgot his name. Is it Ash? No, not Ash. Oh god, losing all credibility. But there was a sequence where they walk to the room with the chains, and the chains are dripping down from the ceiling, and you just hear the chains in the water, and it goes and then you can hear a cat meowing in the background, and then he ends up being killed by the alien. But the point is that sound design, I think, is very much inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, it might not be, but I thought there was a direct kind of link between those two things.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably right. Yeah. I think what I was getting at earlier was that if you're going to write a drama, it solely relies on the writing. Whereas with kind of a genre film, like a horror film, it can rely on gore and it can rely on splatter. And that's why a lot of people like these exploitation films, because of the splatter, because of the gore. So
that's the stuff I can't stand. And that's where I kind of get into the Hostel and Saw territory of, I feel like it's too close to home for feeling like someone could do that. So I just don't like to engage with it. And I mean, like, you know, there's, without getting too harsh, like there's brutal stuff going on in the news over in the UK at the moment of people being like chopped up found in suitcases and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not one of those people like, films like this inspire that violence, because they don't. But what I think is like, it's just scary to think how it's not real, but like it's close enough to be real. I mean, the story of, you said it's based on the same thing that Psycho's based on, isn't it? Like the same real life story inspired it.
Ed Gein, so it's basically based on Ed Gein, who had a strange relationship with his mother and would then go out and dig up corpses and eat them and stuff. So it is, I'm not going to go into that, but if you want to go and Google, everyone who knows about serial killers knows Ed Gein. So There's
And
a
then
few
with
films that have been inspired by him as well, like Silence of the Lambs
Yeah.
being one of them. Psycho, yeah.
and then with Leatherface as well, his mask looks quite like the Joker, right? The kind of it's got white. He's dressed as a clown, and we associate that with Joker now. But like,
So
it's
you've
quite
got
creepy.
3 masks. So he wears 3 different masks. He wears the killing mask, he wears the pretty woman mask, and he wears the old lady mask. And so the masks
Pretty
kind
woman.
of
Really? I mean, that's a stretch.
Yeah, well, so basically, the reason he wore a mask is because the mask like kind of was a reflection of his personality, who he was going to be at that time or that day. Yeah. So
Visually.
for example, like when the cook comes home with Sally, he's wearing the old lady mask. He's wearing an apron, carrying a wooden spoon, because he's in the kitchen. He's being domestic, like he wants to be helpful, and then and then he wears the pretty woman, which was like the makeup. So that's when he is dressing up for dinner. And then we've got the killing mask, obviously, which is the skin mask he wears, and that's when he's murdering and chasing people. The idea of the mask is that there's no personality under the mask. That was what was said by
Creepy
Hansen.
teeth, though.
Huh?
Creepy teeth.
Creepy. Well, yeah. I don't know if that's Hansen's real teeth, but
I don't think that it is, because I looked on IMDb and it doesn't. He looks like he's got teeth that aren't like the ones in the mask. However, maybe he got them fixed. Did he get loads of money off this? Did he get to do all the sequels?
I don't know about that. I've got no. I don't know.
Okay.
But what I think is, as well, the reason it's great the reason why it's in Texas, because Texas is very rural, and so it is that pure isolated feeling of that could happen and be there. So I think it's just like the stars aligned, like it's the perfect storm of, and Toby Hooper was like so demanding of the cast as well. Like they hated him by the end of it. They were, as I say, it was the middle of August in Texas, and they were filming in 100, like it was over 100 degrees most days. And so they were saying that like they wanted to kill him at some point, and a lot of the cast got injured. So Sally, when she jumps out the window at the end, that's actually a stunt double, but Sally does the jump like as in on the ground.
Well, she has 2 jumps, doesn't she? She has 2 smashing through glass windows. She has one earlier on. Because I remember thinking when I was watching it, that's the second time she's done that.
Yeah.
But
Do you
anyway,
know how Toby Hooper got the idea of Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
no, fever dream.
No. So he was in a crowd of people, and he was feeling claustrophobic, and he imagined what it would be like to chainsaw himself out of the crowd, and it kind of like then developed from there. But yeah, so I just think there's a lot of reasons why I love it. I think it's
Sound design is very good. I think the way the cinematography makes you feel engaged is very good. It's not a bad film at all. I think there's a lot of parts of it which are very commendable, but it's just not for me. So I'll be clear on that basis. Like if I was rating it myself, my enjoyment factor is less than like a 3 out of 5, if I'm being brutally honest. However, that's not the rating it should be.
we don't rate on enjoyment on this podcast.
No, we don't. But I would say, yeah, it's yeah. I just look.
Can we
I
just
felt like being that uncomfortable, and I think the ones that I seem to have got on more with are the ones that are kind of like love Carrie. I think it's kind of the idea of it's creepy, but realistically, it's not real. And I think that's my wheelhouse.
You love
Creepy and
psychological
not real.
horror. Yeah, you're way more into the
And I'll tell you
psychological
what,
horror.
St. Maud, when we watched that, I'd kind of classify that in that
Yeah,
ground.
of course, yeah.
Like, but then what was it when I was? What did I say in that? And then I got absolutely shot down by Harriet about. I said, "Oh, not I'm on edge." What did I say?
Oh yeah.
Like the anticipation throughout, just like I feel zero anticipation at any point in this.
I
film.
feel zero apprehension.
Apprehension. That
It's
was
very
it.
funny.
So anyway, so that's kind of my wheelhouse.
I
and
literally
also,
feel zero apprehension.
yeah, and then there's like horror comedy. So stuff like Don't Look Now.
Ready or Not.
Ready or Not, and then they've got the sequel one. Well, it's not a sequel, but
We're gonna see. Yeah,
watch
I'm excited to see that with you. That's going to be really good. Abigail, yeah, really good fun.
Yeah, my point being, I feel like that's my wheelhouse of horror. The Ring also kind of has elements which are it's not really something that can really happen.
I think
It's
this is a
stuff that
must see for you. Like, I am
glad I've
sorry.
seen it. I am like, despite what I've said, I'm glad I've seen it.
Yeah,
I would also
you have
say
to. You have to.
the restoration is incredible. So last thing on bitrate is some restoration till the next one. like if I'd seen the trailer for like an old version pre-DVD and the film looked tarnished, like as in like it looked damaged to buggery, but if it was re-shown in cinemas that many times, I am not surprised. It probably was really hard to get a decent print of it for them to scan and restore. So like the fact they've been able to do what they can do with it is quite incredible. But I saw someone complain in the comments, like, oh, it's not very sharp and it's a bit soft. It's like, it's 60mm film and it's done by like basically not quite film students, but they're not like pro filmmakers.
No.
Like, there's shots where it is soft and it's an accident. But by the way, I remember when I went to see the latest Mission Impossible Last But One film, Fallout. There's a whole take at the end which is soft focus, and someone asked Christopher McCoy why they used it. It was like, no, it was the best performance. He was like, I don't really care if the performance is there, then it can be soft. But yeah,
that's hilarious. Can I just before we finish and move on to Don't Look Now, we have to speak about the very end scene when the sun's coming up and Leatherface is chasing Sally. And she is running for her life, and you really, really think she's going to get caught. She's the final girl, and there's a man with a trailer, poor man with a trailer, and she manages to get away, and the man with the trailer has obviously had it, and Leatherface is so incensed that he is doing what is famously known as the chainsaw dance, and he's waving this chainsaw around, and it's just, I couldn't. Again, I say this all the time. Can you imagine being in the cinema, seeing that for the first time, and being like, "What have we just watched? This is crazy!" Like that where he's, it's just absolutely incensed, and I love that, and that shot, those shots, and I was taking pictures of it. Like I've seen the film loads of times, so I wouldn't normally get my phone out when I'm watching a film, but I was taking pictures to kind of show John afterwards. I was like, "Look, these are the stills that like I loved," and when the sun is coming up at that point, it's really just mesmerizing. Like the still images from that is you wouldn't think you'd just watched a crazy borderline exploitation film, would you?
Well, the screen grabs of it are quite stunning. If you didn't know the notion of what the rest of the film was,
really. And I do think the restoration is crazy what they've done. It really is crazy. So yeah.
Also, really interesting. Sorry, last thing. You know the film stock in that era. Have you noticed how much they love green? Like the film, I was watching a video about different film stocks like emulate different colors, or different film stocks would like prioritize different things like highlights, shadows, or like color. But like green seemed really prominent in a lot of films in the 70s, like especially when you look at stuff like the Indiana Jones movies, original Star Wars, and what have you. And I know this would be a way cheaper film stock, but like I thought if you applied that look to a modern film, people are like, "Oh my god, it's so saturated, it looks crap." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No,
for
like
sure.
The old film stock, it just works. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I watched them. I didn't put it in the list, but I watched Cool Hand Luke, which is Paul Newman film, and that was shot on what's the Technicolor, and the greens in that particularly was like absolutely gorgeous. But
VistaVision is a thing we need to talk about another day, because I'd never fully appreciated what a pain in the arse it was for VistaVision and how the colours reproduced, which is why those amazing Hitchcock films of that era when he went to Hollywood look so incredible.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that.
But anyway, what a film! It's a. I'll be honest, for me, it's perfect. So we're just going to go with that. And for John, he didn't like it. So anyway, what an interesting director we're about to talk about, and that'd be Nicholas Roeg, who's got a varied career, and he did a film called Don't Look Now, 1973.
Hey, Laura!
What on earth was that, John? It was Christine.
Christine is dead, Laura.
You're sad. You're so sad, and there's no need to be. I've seen her.
Incredible permontage in this film.
Oh yeah.
Some weird ADR in this film. It's like this film for me is like the representation of a living nightmare, because every sequence in it. So as Jamie said, psychological horror vibes.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about it is every sequence you feel uncomfortable, At no point does anything feel like reality. It all feels like a dream. It feels like when you're in a dream and you're trying to talk to someone and no words come out your mouth while something terrible's happening to you. That's what it feels like. Or something terrible's happening outside, but you can't do anything about it. Some great dramatic sequences in this film right from the off. So, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, I was slightly worried about this film because the beginning is very, very bleak.
Dark.
But let's just quickly go over the synopsis, yeah?
Yeah, you go for it. You synopsis.
Well, it's another really simple one. So we've essentially got Julie Christie playing Laura Baxter, Donald Sutherland playing John Baxter, and we start with a nice little family life. And there's some two kids playing, a little girl with a bright red jacket on, which becomes very synonymous. So basically, this young girl like kind of drowns in their pond that they live in their house, next to their house, and so John runs out to try and save her because he kind of has this feeling that something's not right, and
he's looking at weird frames and stills of the church he's restoring in Venice, but he sees this weird figure in a red coat, but the red starts to bleed through.
Yeah,
no explanation.
No explanation.
But it's that kind of film where you just go with it, and then as that happens, he runs out, but she's already dead, and it's pretty harrowing. But there's incredible use of slow motion in this film. So, like when he rises with her out the water.
That's a really iconic
really cool.
still of Donald Sutherland. So that whenever you see, and by the way, let's just say now,
rest in peace,
because Donald Sutherland he's been in many films that I've absolutely loved over the years, and he's an amazing actor, and it's really sad to lose him. I would just love to share one of my favourite performances of his, which would be in a film called Lock Up, where he plays a prison warden in a film directed by John Flynn. That might be my earliest memory of seeing Donald Sutherland. I thought, like, he's a real bad guy. He plays such a great bad guy, and we know John's going to reference another bad guy that he plays. Go on, John.
No. The first film I remember him doing that I watched was the Italian Job remake with Mark Wahlberg.
Right,
and he says the famous quote. Someone says to him, "I'm fine." He's like, "Fine." Frightened, insecure, negative, and emotional. And I was just like, "That's good. I like that." And the fact I remembered that from that film.
Yeah,
he's 2003 to this day is quite.
He's
incredible.
amazing, and his career is just enormous.
He's acing games as well, which is what Jamie was getting towards. Like, yeah, he's a good baddie in that.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant in Hunger Games. Yeah, and God, you can't really do it justice. He'd have to have his own dedicated episode. Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well. Like, I love him in that, and I really, really love him in Clute, which is a great film. So. Yeah, rest in peace. It's really sad to lose him. And yeah, at some point we'll do a nice little one. Did you know he's in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, by the way? The film,
as in the one before the
he's in the film. Yeah,
interesting. I'd tell you what. My main takeaway from this is how much he looks like Kiefer Sutherland when he's younger, which is probably a really obvious thing to say, but his eyes and nose, like that profile, is so distinctive and just yeah. And the only thing I'll say about this film. It's quite funny is some of the ADR, so like additional dialogue that's recorded, that's applied. Like, he makes some weird ass noises, doesn't he? Oh. Now the first one's like, when he's fetching his daughter out of pond. So I'm going to give him a pass because I've no idea what that sounds like, and I don't ever want to know. So like, yeah, we'll let him pass. The other one is when he has an incident, which we'll get into later, like during the church restoration, but he's just being weird. I don't know if it's the sound mix or what, but it's very strange. Yeah, and I think it's all supposed to feel creepy and strange, so I just kind of go with it.
Yeah, I think for that kind of the moaning when he's got his daughter in his arms. Yeah, it's horrifying, really. And this was a short story by Daphne du Maurier, who also actually wrote Rebecca, which we covered 2 episodes ago.
Yes.
And at the beginning of this film really reminds me of, the really scary 1970s British infomercials where it's like, on about like weird niche things like corn grinders and stuff, like put a grid on it. Like, so basically it would be like these, there's a really famous, just type in scary British infomercial in YouTube, right? And Britain used to do these crazy, like terrifying adverts for like random stuff. So there's one for like, there'd be one for like drowning at a pool, or something, and it'd be like and it's got this kid, and it's like got these like all those like, you know, when they play the chords, and it's like oh, and then it's got this man over the background going, "It's a creeping death." And it's like they're really scary.
Yeah.
Just go and watch them. This is what this film reminded me of at the beginning. It reminded me of a Corn thing where it says, "Put a grid on it." Anyway, the girl, obviously, this has got mise en scène all over it, hasn't it? It's like she's got a red coat on. We know it's danger, all that kind of stuff. And red is like a real like color throughout the film that's very, very significant.
Yeah.
But so after his daughter dies, we then see them both in Venice.
So him and his wife, sorry,
Laura and John,
it's the film is about them rediscovering their relationship essentially, and weirdly, their child dies, so they send their other child off to boarding school in the UK while they go to Italy, which I did.
He doesn't even get mentioned, does he?
A bit of a wild choice, but hey, whatever. And then they go out for a lovely meal, and they meet two characters, and the one is this blind lady who is like a clairvoyant. She feels like she can see the future, and she basically says, you know, I've spoke to your daughter, she's happy, she's with you now. And then it sets off this chain of events of kind of coming to terms with the death, and like she hasn't found it through medication. This is the mother, sorry. She hasn't found it through medication. She hasn't found it through counselling. She hasn't found it through her husband. But by meeting someone who says her daughter's okay and happy, someone who can communicate with the afterlife, or so they claim, and that's what the film is about, do you believe, do you not, then how does that pan out? So we see her have very passionate sex with her husband for the first time since everything happened.
We need to talk about that scene because it's one of the most iconic scenes in cinema.
But it's got legitimate reason for being there, I would argue.
Absolutely.
And it cuts to like before and after a lot, like throughout it as well.
Of course. So this intimate scene, like while they're sleeping with each other, this is the first scene that was shot, by the way. So this is the first scene that was shot, and Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie had never met each other before. And the reason why it's so famous is because it's quite like, I think it's quite a delicate scene. It's not the kind of scene, it shows them making love and not kind of like, usually you just see a sex scene and they're just banging, like, which just isn't the case. People were saying that they actually had sex on camera.
No, they didn't.
It's been completely rubbished by everyone on set.
I think it's sound really cheesy, but it's an emotional love scene, isn't it? Because you know that realistically it's the sex isn't really what it's about. It's about what it means for their relationship.
The reconnection. It's about them two reconnecting with each other.
So pretentious, but it genuinely.
What did you say?
Just the way we said it, we were like, "Oh, it's about the reconnection," but it genuinely is. No. It sounds pretentious, but
we're not a pretentious podcast.
I would argue this film is like quite pretentious anyway. Psychological horror in general has usually got quite a pretentious, like
100%.
Yeah, to it.
A23, you know. But that scene in particular, like, you can tell that the relationship's been strained because of the daughter, obviously. And a lot of the time, you would see when parents lose a child, they would, of course, it causes all sorts, like parents split up, all kinds of things. She's not in a good place at all, and we see lots of different like parts where he's drinking, she's on pills, that kind of thing. But before that, obviously, they reconnect through this love scene, and you kind of get the impression it's the first time they've slept with each other since that happened. Mm-hmm. And after that, what we see, so one thing I did notice, like before that, there's lots of mirrors in this film. Like there's mirrors everywhere, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute, because Nicholas Roeg loves mirrors and reflections. But before that, like we kind of, I don't know whether I'm looking into it too much, but we kind of see her like getting undressed, and she's wearing kind of plain clothes, like plain underwear kind of thing. And then they have sex, and then afterwards we really throughout this, like we kind of see like these flashbacks of like her getting ready while they're sleeping together, like, and it's very passionate love scene, isn't it? She's then getting ready, and you can immediately tell she's
sparkling in her eye.
There's
I know, but it's no, but genuinely,
John's like, I know that look.
I know nothing, but like The idea is like, the reconnection happened, and like
there's blood running through her.
He's basically doing a little skip down the.
Mate, that's so funny, man. There's a sparkle in her eye. She's doing a mascara. She's
kind of looking
wearing
down
black underwear.
Like,
there's lots of these like things she's doing, like a lot of self-care things that that she wasn't doing before that she's now doing because she's like kind of like, as I say, reconnected with her husband and is feeling a bit better about it. So that scene is very, very famous because of the way it was shot and because of the passion, because of the connection between them. And a lot of people said that they actually had sex on screen, which they didn't. So so it's great. So anyway, from there they go to dinner. Oh, go on.
Well, we talked about dinner and basically like, so they meet Heather and Wendy. So Heather's the blind clairvoyant lady and her sister, and they say that we can communicate with your daughter. And obviously Laura kind of gets enthralled with this kind of idea of being able to do that. And the film is about her and John after they've reconnected, almost kind of coming apart again because he doesn't agree with this route and he's like, she's just dead. But then the twist of the film, I would argue, is Heather says, I think he has the gift too, which is why he's uncomfortable, because she explains that he ran out before like anything, like he sensed something was wrong as he ran outside. So this film would do great for repeat viewing because there's a lot of sequences that
absolutely
out of context. And then the first watch is a bit like, that's weird. And then second time round. But anyway, essentially, their son is at boarding school in England and they get a phone call and they're like, he's really unwell. And of course, panic sets in. And Laura says, first plane back, I'm going to go and sort him out. So off she goes. But when she leaves to go on the plane, John, so we're in Venice, by the way, beautifully shot. Like, Venice is really creepy in this because it shows it's a place in massive decay and he's part of the restoration of it. People don't really like him there, is the impression, because he's an American coming over.
And it's a character in itself, Venice.
And basically, in that part, and it confused me initially, a boat goes by and there's three women wearing black and they look like they're in mourning. One of them is Laura, his wife.
Yeah.
One of them is Heather and Wendy, the two sisters.
And his wife's supposed to be on a plane.
They're supposed to be on a plane in the UK. So he's then like, oh my God, they've kidnapped my wife because he doesn't trust them. I need to tell the police. Now, the police thing is weird because the police officer's like creepy vibes, man. I don't know.
So do you want to know why?
Oh, go on.
Okay, so the police officer didn't speak a word of English. So
I didn't know if he was just being like an absolute creep and he fancied Laura Baxter because he has that Polaroid of her and he does keep
Laura
checking
Baxter
it out.
is drop dead gorgeous in this. I'd just like to say, like, she's absolutely gorgeous. And so he has every right to keep that Polaroid.
He can't avert his eyes. He keeps looking. No. And he's doing like a weird drawing of her as well.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
so basically there is a kind of a side story to the film, which is very, very important. There's actually a serial killer going around. And that gets mentioned a few times, that there's a serial killer going around in Venice.
And Don Sutherland thinks that the serial killers might be the blind lady and her sister because on the basis of,
Yeah. So with that, the policeman, right, he didn't speak a word of English. So he essentially just got given lines to read. So he read them line by line, and that's why it looks so like he wasn't given any he didn't know what they mean, so that's why there's quite like a sinister like vibe to him.
It's almost like a dream, like the way he talks to
I think John. It's all like a bit of a dream, to be honest.
Mr. Baxter,
your
wife gone missing? Oh, such a shame.
He could have been cast in House of Gucci.
I get Jared Leto in there, but it's a weird vibe. But so essentially he thinks that's happened. But then shortly afterwards, he gets the police to act on this. They arrest poor Heather and Wendy.
Yeah.
But very shortly afterwards, he gets a phone call from his wife being like, oh, he's fine. The son's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm flying back. And he's like, but I saw you on a boat. She's like, she ignores that actually. He says it like 3 times and she just completely bypasses it, ignores it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, I'll pick you up. Yada, yada. Off they go. So he has to go back to the embassy to go and go and get Heather out of prison. She's like, I don't want to be here, Mr. Baxter. And he's like, oh, nice place. And he's like, yeah, I'm really sorry. Basically says, sorry that I thought you abducted my wife. And Yeah, basically, after he takes them home, Heather starts having an incident, or like an episode of the clairvoyance where I think it's because Donald Sutherland's character John took them home,
Yeah.
and she's like touched him, or he's touched her in the sense of like he's helping her up the stairs. I think she's then sensed his future, and then she starts like uncontrollably shaking, which I find really creepy, by the way. But anyway, she starts uncontrollably shaking.
Yeah, that is horrible. That.
And she's like, I can't remember what she says, but basically she's like, get him back, get him back. So my brain's at this point like, is she really bad? Like, is she really bad? Like,
Yeah.
Are they luring him in to kill him? But it's foreshadowing. Like, she knows that he's about to have an experience where she's going to lead him to die. So throughout the film, his daughter was wearing red at the start in the coat. He sees someone in a red coat throughout the film, like running off, and it's like, is it a figment of his imagination? Is it, is the actual killer in this film a visual representation of what's in his brain, actually not really what's there?
For me, that's what I thought it was for a while.
Creepy. And then basically there's lots of sequences, and it reminds me of Moonraker for this, which is also shot in Venice, where like there's no sound and no music, but you just hear you like the stomping of like feet in like a 70s film studio. But anyway, and Moonraker. But basically, you end up with this sequence where John's chasing someone in a red coat over and over and over, and he finally corners them. And then as they turn around, it turns out it's the image he saw in the church at the start of the film when he was looking through the slides. But the killer is like a small lady, essentially, and she looks him in the eye and just slashes him.
With a cleaver, yeah. So it's a little person who, it's like quite a scary looking small lady, yeah. And she sticks a meat cleaver in his neck.
And it's grim.
And then you realise then, because it is quite hard to unpack. It's not a straightforward film. You realise that actually, like, he's been having premonitions.
So seeing them on the boat was him seeing
it was a premonition. He was seeing his own death.
It's his funeral. Like it's then
it's
going
your
to his
funeral.
funeral. Yeah, and also you get the whole like throughout the film when he's in the church. There's like the priest has weird dreams and is like disturbed by things, and like he has a vision, I think, in the church that something bad's going to happen to him because he almost falls. That's when we were joking around saying he's like, But it looks like some ropey stunts, by the way. It looks like he could break his legs at any point. It's the 70s and no one cares. Just like, just hang off here for a bit. Oh, okay, fine. But yeah, I really liked it because it was, as Jamie said, more psychological, almost thriller as well.
Reminded
as
me a bit of Possession in a way. Like
absolutely,
it really had that
weird nightmarish vibe.
Yeah,
every conversation feels not real, but slightly aloof, and
it's also in Eastern Europe. Not Eastern Europe, but it's in Europe. But so it's in Europe. It's in the 70s. It's like it really did just give me those like fever dream kind of vibes. Like it's quite a strange film, and I would say it's not for everyone. A lot of people maybe wouldn't like it.
It's not very long though. It's in like an hour and 40. I want to say
hour and 40. Yeah, we've had a short week this week. Yeah, an hour and 40.
I think for horror, I don't think you can maintain. Personally, I think it's harder to maintain that tension for much longer. I think you get. I'd love to see what you'd think of Hereditary. I'm due a rewatch of Hereditary. I don't particularly like it. Hereditary, Midsommar, The Witch. I would like you to see those films and see what you'd think of them, because I think you'd really like them. Well, we're heading into that season, are we not? So
not quite
yet, but yeah.
Have you been thinking about what films you might want to watch next?
No, I'm gonna have to message you about it. But I thought we were closer to Alien Romulus than we actually are. So
we will be covering that though, 100%, won't we?
Not next week. Sorry, not next episode. The one after that will definitely be Alien Romulus, because I'm very excited.
A couple of bits I just did want to mention about this. So the drowning sequence apparently was really difficult to shoot because
I'm not surprised.
The young girl Christine, played by Sharon Williams, became completely like hysterical when she was submersed in the pond,
as you would.
So they had like rehearsals at a swimming pool, and they were fine. But then obviously when it came down to it, an actual pond, she was like really not in a good place.
It would be dark and cold as buggery as well, though.
God, imagine, yeah. A farmer on the neighbouring land volunteered his daughter, who was like quite a good swimmer apparently, but she refused to be submersed when it came to filming. And then in the end, the scene was filmed in a water tank using 3 different girls. So I found that quite interesting.
Traumatized all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think the film is brilliant. The other thing was obviously red is like it's a color associated with peril throughout the film. Like whenever we see red, something bad generally does happen.
Some cinematographers talked about how you shouldn't use red on film because it's so distracting.
Well, it is,
and I feel like that's the point in this film. But like,
yeah. So you would notice that the one thing that one of the main things I noticed that Venice, although like a beautiful Italian city, apparently it was quite difficult to film in because the tides were coming up and down, so it was hard to keep continuity. And Nicholas Roeg didn't really want the film to feel like a travel documentary kind of thing. So the one thing compared to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where we see like beautiful sunsets, you don't see anything like that. So this whole film, it's got a very grey, muted color palette. It's overcast all the time.
So the red really sticks out.
Quite obviously like a creative choice, isn't it? So it's a bit of a weird one. But we see that quite a lot. So yeah, it's really good. It's not for everyone. But yeah, we've got a few wee questions that we could answer.
Yes, do it.
Cool. Right. So we've got a question here. Can big budget horrors still work? Name some big budget horror, as I don't know what the biggest budget for a horror even is. Okay, well, it depends what you class as horror, because Prometheus.
No, but I think you're more thinking like Saw, because surely if as each one goes on, the budget gets bigger, doesn't it?
I don't know, actually. I don't think the budgets are like quite that big.
So in terms of high budget horror, it's hard to kind of know So Jamie went for Prometheus, and it's like, I kind of agree with that, but is it really horror?
It's not really horror, but that's the highest budget I could think of.
Yeah, World War Z or Z.
World War Z.
Budget between 190 and 270 million.
Yeah.
Wolfman, 150 million.
Do you know the ones?
Chapter 2, 75 million.
So that was going to be the one that came to mind for me. Like, like a film that feels a horror film that feels really high budget would be it. That's the one thing. I wonder what the budget for Midsommar was, because that's very like I'll have a quick look at that. But Midsommar,
it says House of Wax was 40 million back in 2005, which says it was quite high for a slasher film.
Oof, Midsommar budget was 9 million. What?
Yeah, I can believe that.
Do you know what's amazing? That like stuff like Midsommar's 9 million, Talk to Me was 4.5 million, Black Phone was 16 million. It's amazing, really, like how they do keep the cost down, and a lot of it will be due to like the actors that are in these films as well, that they won't be like huge actors, like, so a lot on it. Like, I'd imagine like a lot of the budget went on the fact that you've got Bill Hader and etc. in the film. So when you have got these like kind of independent kind of productions, like that's kind of why you're gonna get better. So yeah, I would say they're the big budgets that I think big budget horror can still work, yeah, of course. But again, the problem with spending all that money is that when you do release it in the cinema, you are cut. That's why they always try and get these films down to a 12 or a 15, because you get more bums in seats, because more people that can come and see it, you know.
It's interesting here. Comment on this thread was often not something to seek out. High budget equals CGI and over the top special effects, not what you want in a horror movie. The one thing that I would say is that it's quite clear and obvious over the years that horror does not need to be big budget, because I would say out of all of the films, it's the most lucrative you can make. Like we've discussed it before. I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre before was the highest grossing horror film ever made until Halloween was released a couple of years later. So yeah. Anyway, so cool. Thank you very much for the questions. So we've got a few questions here around. So let's tackle this one first. So Movie Scenes and Shit writes in saying, lots of famous father-son actors out there. Are Donald and Kiefer the best? Oh, I mean, you've got Kirk Douglas and Michael Douglas as well, who are also legendary, you know.
For me, Kirk and Michael, I prefer them to. I would also actually say that Martin Sheen.
Oh, yeah, and
Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez, they're father and sons. And they've been in some of my favourite films, like my absolute favourite films. So I think they're a good shout as well. The only other ones, I can't really think of it anymore off the top of my head, that would be
No.
that are like kind of notable? Well, there's obviously a lot. You've obviously got your what's his name? Will Smith and Jaden Smith.
I
But
think
I
I'd say
don't
Clint
particularly
Eastwood
like.
is Scott Eastwood. Scott Eastwood was in like 2 Fast and Furious films, wasn't he? I know he was
Yeah.
in Suicide Squad, but it's not. I feel
What
like
I
it's
love to see is
another-
Ben Stiller and Jerry Stiller. They've always been in lots of, but I wouldn't particularly say that they're renowned for
No.
incredible acting. But they've been in a lot of films that I absolutely love.
I'm voting Douglas Sons.
Yeah, you're going for the
Sons.
Douglas ones. The final one I would mention that I did write down would be Bill Skarsgård and Alexander
Yeah.
Skarsgård.
Fair.
They're cracking.
Cool.
So yeah, so they'll be the ones. But yeah, I would probably side with John and go Kirk and Michael, to be honest. But I love Donald and Kiefer. So we've got a couple 3 questions that kind of ask similar things.
Go for
So
it.
friend of the show, Watch with Beck, says, what is your favorite decade for horror? So hold that. Kims.horror.escape. Is 70s a golden age of horror? What is the golden age of horror? Movie scenes and shit with the second question. Is 70s the best decade for horror? It might just be in my opinion. So
It changed
So-
horror, didn't it? I mean, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre influenced like that different style that you were talking about, like the filmmaking approach. Alien's still 79, which classifies as, you know,
I think 80s for me, I think I think it's between the 70s and 80s. I really do.
80s is all the sequels though, isn't it?
Well, you would say that. So the 80s is all the sequels, but it's also The Shining, Dress to Kill. You've got some really good giallo in there. So Possession is there, Tenebra, Pieces, The Lost Boys, Child's Play, The Fly.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot. I love the ones we've done on the pod then are from that
really,
era.
really strong. Like the 80s is really strong. What I would say is, it's hard in it because am I biased? Like I used to say early on in the pod, or I used to say all the time that I prefer the 70s is my least favorite decade for films. So, but like I feel like I've really changed. I've changed my mind on that quite heavily.
It's more just how like different people look, like the perms and the flares and stuff. It just feels like and it's quite a gritty era filmmaking and like quite like lower budget and just like moody pieces.
With the 70s,
Yeah.
you've got Carrie. You've got a lot of the giallo films. So you've got Bird of the Crystal Plumage. You've also got The Exorcist, Deep Red, The Wicker Man, Halloween, Alien, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Suspiria.
People pushing the medium.
It's quality, isn't it? It's absolutely quality.
Yeah, the genre, I should say. Sorry, but yeah,
So what I would say is probably that 80s is it's got loads of crap, like loads of sequels, but it's also got some like the 70s. I think kind of reinvented the genre.
Yeah, it reinvigorated it. Also, it wasn't the Hammer horror style or like the old school science fiction.
Definitely.
Horror.
Yeah.
Like
And
Starbeast.
so I would say Beck. My favorite decade, I would probably say, is the 80s because the pacing is faster. It's got some of my favorites of all time. I don't know whether that is just because I grew up watching more 80s stuff, but I would say that what is the best decade for? I don't know. It's out of the 70s and 80s.
So the films I like, it'll be 70s, but that's only because Alien's in there.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. And then,
If I'm being
to be
honest.
honest, the 2010s as like a really good decade for horror. Like you've got quite a few like absolutely crackers in there, but that's like I'm not going to go and name them all, but anyway.
Cool.
Yeah. So there we go. There is one last question. What did all the subsequent Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies do wrong that the OG did so well? I'd actually argue that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is great. It was made many years after Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Isn't it like a black comedy?
It's a black comedy. It's by Tobe Hooper again. It's very funny. It's just very funny and like a real good time. And you definitely show it with friends. The others, I've not seen some of the others. So I've seen the remakes that were absolutely trash. It just loses all of the charm of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think all these remakes. The one from 2020, I want to say 2023, is supposed to be like a 1-star absolute piece of trash. So yeah, but yeah, so I don't really have a comprehensive answer because I know more about the Freddy Krueger films and Friday the 13th films, not the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Anyway, John, you said you're going to text me about the.
Yeah, we will do a post about what the next two films are. Jamie's giving me a bit of a pass, so let's see where we end up.
John gets to choose because
it
he's
won't be horror.
It won't be horror. Anyway, as always, please find us on YouTube, Movies in a Podshell, all one word, Tony. Find us on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcasts. It's free. Buy a t-shirt, MoviesinaPODshell.SumUpStore.com, £18. I ship them from my house. They're pre-shrunk cotton. They're responsibly sourced. They don't shrink in the wash. They feel so soft. Yeah, please go and rate us 5 stars. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Like you don't understand how much it helps us. It really, really helps us. So please do all that. And yeah, how many people do actually go on to their Spotify and rate us 5 stars? Please, it'll take you 2 seconds, I promise. Please do it now, please. John, anything from you, mate?
You can find me at jcb.video on Instagram, and you can find Jamie at
Movies in a Podshell. I just run the account, yeah, it's no big deal.
Busy guy.
Anyway, it's time to go, John. Say goodbye, John.
Bye, John.
See ya.